What's going on, Spitfires? Welcome to another awesome episode of the Spitfire Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Lemunyon, the Spitfire Coach, and today's episode is quite a treat. I am sitting down with Dr. Stacy Mobley, and we dive into so many different topics. It's hard to pinpoint one theme. We just went for it. But before we get into the show, I want to just bring your attention, if you are not already subscribed, you can go and subscribe to the Spitfire Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify. Head on over to spitfirepodcast.com to get direct links, or you can just put it in the old Google or DuckDuckGo, or wherever you get your search engine needs met. So here's Dr. Stacy. I hope you enjoy the show.
I don't know what it's like really to not think about anything, Lauren. I just have not had that in my life, especially as an introvert. Like that, it's not possible. And so I really think I started to experience the guy thing when they can really just sit and think about nothing. And so when you ask me like, what's going on today? Like what? And I'm like, everything and nothing. And then it just clicked with me. I was like, what? I'm in a nothing zone. And at least a portion of my brain. That's funny.
What is the nothing zone? I'm so curious about this.
Like, this is sounding really crazy when I say it out loud, but it's like 3/4 of my brain has a lot going on. It's like overactivity right now. And then 1/4 of the brain is just like, I'm good. I'm just going to chill. I'm on the beach. I am in nothing land.
Oh, so it's more chill than nothing.
And for me, as an ambitious person, and I'm sure like others can relate to this, and it's a process for me to move through this. Sometimes I feel like relaxing and just being is nothing, which is not. It's something. Like you said, Lauren, it's so true. Because we need that time to just decompress, just give our body, our emotional and physical and psychological side of ourselves time to just like really decompress, especially nowadays. So it's definitely not nothing. You're so right. Before my college brain that still exists sometimes, I'm like, I should be doing 20 things. What am I doing? Why am I doing nothing? And it's like, this is not nothing, Stacy.
But this is so true. Like actually, so our friend Ebony, we love Ebony. We were talking about the window of tolerance yesterday. Have you heard of this?
Oh, tell me more.
So essentially there is kind of this hyperactivity where we're trying to like do the most, get things done, hyperreactive emotionally, see high conflict, go, go, go. And then there's hypoactivity where it's kind of what you're talking about, this kind of dejection, like I've got no power, no control, checkout mode. But in between it is kind of this like curious space of like, what do I have to work with? What do I want to do? Do I need to move? Do I want to rest? And so it sounds like what you're describing are two of the same state, but in different reactions. So one is reacting in doing and creating and going, and one is in reaction to not wanting to do it and rejecting it.
I love that, Lauren, because it's so true. How many of us, especially right now, are we're always in one of those states, I think, especially if we want to do something with our lives. I feel like and it's a matter of how long we choose to stay there. I don't know, based on what you ladies were talking about, if it's something that's completely a conscious choice or not. I feel like a good portion of it could be. When someone like Lauren and Ebony is like, look, this is where you are. Okay, now what you want to do about it? You know? Like what you want to do about it. So yeah, because there is a point of, so I feel, okay, let me say this, Lauren. When you said lack of control or lack of power and loss of control, that is a big deal for, I believe, like the people who we serve, right? Like that's a big deal. There's some people that are okay with that. They've never really known what it was like to have it, even though we always have it, right? They don't know what it's like to use it. But when we do, I love that state of being in a conscious choice mode, of choosing if I do not want to give my power to that thing versus a lack of power, in that state. It's like, is it worth, me giving even, I would say, my focus or my time or even my thought space to that right now? Like, if I can't control some aspect of it, like, why even put energy there at all right now?
Yeah. So
Huh.
I want to go back to something you said of like, are they even aware if they have power and control? And I don't know if they know when they have it, but they certainly know when they don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's that wanting and that longing and that frustration of, I don't have power, I don't have agency to make the change, or the perception of it that keeps people stuck.
I agree. And the question that could be reshaped there is, how do I, in whatever stage or state I am, begin to practice or exercise or figure out how to step into that? Because I had a specific situation in mind when I thought about that. So I know this feels really abstract right now, but I was thinking about something specific when I thought about the power thing, because you know where we are right now, and there's supposedly the job thing with people, right? For the people who want jobs, like, we clearly don't want jobs, even though we turn our businesses into jobs sometimes. That's a whole different story. But it's like the thought process around how money is made and where money comes from, right? And so thinking, well, I can't do this because I only make this much. So they're assuming that the job or the side gig, if they do Lyft or Uber or something, that's the only container that money can come through. And so it's like, in a way, giving power away.
Yeah.
And they could say, hey, how can I make it? Like, I know I got this container that is so cool that I have this container. It's not a bad thing that I have that container if I choose to have it. But yet, how can I create another avenue? How can I let another avenue be created for me? Cooler.
Yeah. Or who says how many containers you can have, or how big your container is, or how small your container is?
Right. And so it's a process for all of us, right, Lauren?
Yeah. Well, that was the big eye opener for me. I was like, who says? Like, the little like bratty 5-6-year-old came out of me. I'm like, who says so?
It's real. It's real. I think that's the beauty of life. Like, some people see it and will label as a struggle. I'm like, isn't it fascinating? You get to change.
Yes. But imagine never feeling like you could, never feeling like you are one of those people who could, that you don't have the permission slip. Everyone else has it, but there's something about you that can't access it.
The thing is, I'm surrounded by people like that. I grew up with people like that. Most of my immediate family and extended families like that. So they look at me and like, you're the oddball out. Like, she's like this nerdy girl and somehow she's lucky. And I'm like, oh my God, I am so not lucky. Like, it's not about luck. It's about choice,
So let's break that down. So in this example, what is luck? How do you think luck is defined?
Oh, this is going to sound so cliche, but I'll sprinkle something on top of it. Okay. So it's like, that quote I'm going to mess up. But about preparedness.
Yeah.
Plus meeting opportunity. That's a part of it, but I'll sprinkle on it what we just talked about, like that conscious choice, because you can prepare, and then when the opportunity presents itself, you miss it. But at the same time, is there really a missing? But, that can be another angle of the conversation. But I do feel like choice is a huge part of it. And it starts with deciding that you want something different, not even what you want, that you just want something different. You don't even have to know what the something is. You don't. Because I feel like I had more what people would call miracles or exciting things happen, where a miracle is basically like when you don't, like, how the fuck did that happen? You don't know what happened. That's what people label a miracle until they figure out.
I love that definition.
It's like hindsight. And I was like, oh. And so I feel like I had more of that happen when I was like in middle school and high school, believe it or not. But that's when our brain is like when we're kids, we don't put as many limitations on ourselves as we do as we grow older. And we listen to society more and them describing who you are or who you aren't and what you deserve and what you don't deserve. And you start to believe it. Because I don't think that as a kid, I didn't hear those things. I just didn't believe it. You know, it's like, oh, that's cute. Anyway, so I still want to do this. And as I got older, I feel like I was starting to fall prey to some of the, maybe I am. And it's subconsciously, I don't know what it was, or like maybe that is, or maybe things have to be this way. And it's like, I just snap out of that because I'm like, what the freak? No, it's not. Example.
Where do you think it's leaking in from?
Okay. When you asked that question, I just saw people in my brain. So part of it definitely is environment. I do think part of it is inertia, because when you have a certain level of momentum, like you're seeing even small things, because people forget to count the small things. The small things add up to the big things. And so when you start to slow down a bit, or you're taking a pause, or something doesn't feel like it's going right, that's where the stories come in. And then that can create a little bit of unnecessary circles of pauses. Because I don't think it's ever really truly being still. Sometimes I call it the merry-go-round. So we go in the merry-go-round instead of going straight forward. Yeah, I think parts of that contributed to it.
Yeah. So I'm curious about this image of the merry-go-round. So you get on it with the intent of something, but it ends up showing up as something else. So what's the intent when you get on that merry-go-round?
I'm going to do a fun ride, give myself a break, whatever you want to call it, and then I'll hop off. And then you start seeing images over and over again. And when we see something, what they say, like what, 7 times, 8 times, now it's 9 times.
I heard 12.
Girl, it's up to 12 now? Okay.
I heard 8 to 12.
Lauren says 12. So 12 times, and it starts to imprint on your brain. You're like, the first time you saw it, it's like, oh yeah, okay. Second time, you're like, what's that? Oh. Third time, by the time you get to the 12th time, it's like your reality. And it's like, no, you're supposed to hop off that merry-go-round in the first or second round, you know?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have time to get to the 12 to imprint, to become any version of truth.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to distinguish that this can work for you or not for you. If it's a passive, subconscious imprint that you are tolerating in this reactive or non-reactive state, it is still a decision, versus what are you intentionally and deliberately putting in front of you to create a positive, impactful imprint for you in your future.
Yes. Slipping out the negative and putting something else in.
Well, and if you are not doing it, somebody else is doing it for you.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, you said something and it really triggered a thought that I feel is really important as well. And I forgot, but
it's so important. I forgot. I'll say it 11 more times.
But that was so true, because it really comes back to the power within us. Oh, I remember now, Lauren. Okay. So I remember. So, and the thing about those imprints is sometimes those imprints are bubbling up from our past, from our childhood.
Oh yeah.
It's not, many times it's not the new stuff. It's just, it's things that are coming up, the voices that have been there in the back of your mind, but for some reason you haven't been consciously aware of it. And it's just, it hits you a different way when you've positioned yourself a different way in life. Like when you have the momentum, the voices are like not as important anymore, because you're just like, oh, well, that voice says this voice says you're not enough because of blank, blank, blank. But look at all this stuff happening in my life right now. Like this is evidence that doesn't matter. But when you're taking that pause, slowing down, that inertia, that voice comes out again, you're like, well, maybe that's why this didn't work. Maybe that's blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's because you're not, making a conscious choice to do something different, see something different, and most importantly, be something different, or just get that inspired action going again.
Mm-hmm. Well, so even in what you're saying, there's a level of judgment there of how things should be. There's an expectation versus maybe we weren't ready yet. What don't we know that we need to find out? What is it that we're exploring, or where have we taken risks that we need to try again? And I think even approaching it of like, this is how it should be, is setting us up for this kind of downfall merry-go-round.
And how often do we do that?
All the time.
And then you have people label it. Even we start labeling it. When I say we, I'm like the royal we.
The royal we.
Not necessarily for people listening, Lauren and I. But we're human. So, and sometimes when I say we, I am including myself too. So like we label as procrastination. And I have like really dealt with myself with that. I'm like, sometimes it is procrastination. Other times it's just not the right time. And that's okay. And other times it's like, that wasn't even the road I need to go down, period. So that was protection. I switched it with another P,
Can I tell you my theory on procrastination?
Tell me.
Laziness and procrastination do not exist. But what you do have is one or more of 4 lacks. So LACKS. So you either lack information, you lack resources, you lack a plan, or you lack the desire. So be clear on why it is that you're not doing something, instead of labeling yourself as a procrastinator or as lazy.
I try not to date conversations like this because they can be evergreen, but I will say, we do this when the end of one year and the start of a new year. Is that not a common thing that happens?
Of course. But we've had 2 years, like 1 year and 2, like we haven't really experienced a new year
ever.
And yeah, but these are the tricks and the games that we play to make us feel better or worse, I will say. Oh, that rhymed. I've just sound very like children's book-esque.
Mary Poppins.
Oh, I am like Mary Poppins. I carry around a bag with lots of crap in it.
I do too.
Yeah. But like, here's the thing. Like, if you can be specific and actually objective about what you're lacking, you can then build a plan and have a more adult conversation. But when we lump it into a big label, then it becomes an excuse and then a defining moment on who we are and why we're not successful. And that's the story. That's the old children's story that we play.
And it becomes a song that never ends.
Yeah, and we won't sing that song. What was it, the Lamb Chop song?
Yes. And it does. And it's just like, it's not. And it's just not. It's not. I'm trying to think of the word, but it's just not. Let's just leave it as it's just not. It's just not.
Yeah. Well, since we did bring up, the dates around the time that we're talking, this is kind of this really interesting lull, weird time, but also like loading time where people start like making the big promises for next year and start buying memberships and subscriptions and tools and resources and experts, all in the hopes that there's going to be a crescendo catalyst that life will be different because someone else tells them what to do.
And I'll say that there is something to riding let's use the word energy because that's what people would use, the energy of the time of change. But it's like, you don't have to ride the status quo version of what that looks like in terms of the details, like you described, like those 4 points. So it's really interesting because everybody, we do that. We load up on all this stuff. And then by mid-year, we're back to.
Oh, you think it's getting a mid-year? It's like February.
I was trying to be generous.
I know. You're so kind. I'm like, let's be real.
Yes, it's true. Girl, end of January, February.
It's like second week of January. I'm so sorry.
But like what you shared, Lauren, really can help, someone listening, like really, like those are the four, focus on those 4 points and those four golden nuggets, and you'll get way further than if you don't.
Yeah.
And it's okay if that, and I want to add this too, because a lot of times we get on ourselves about this, and it's okay if those 4 points change
Always
throughout the process. They're supposed to,
Mhm.
because who you're being is shifting as you step into those steps. And so that's natural. That's not abnormal. So I also don't want someone to get stuck in what they think was the original plan, and I can't detour from that, because that is a game we play, I think, too, that can derail as well.
I want to go back to, you said who you're being, not who you are. That is some powerful messaging, and words are important and powerful. And if we're not using the right ones for us, then we actually are doing more harm. But like, you are in a constant state of learning and growing and evolving. And who you were 2 years ago, who we all were 2 years ago, is not the same person as we are today. And it probably will not be the same in 2 years from now.
Yes. Yes. And that's mentally, emotionally, that's physically even. Like, we turn over cells every certain amount of years.
Is it 7 years?
Yes. So we're like literally different. New.
Yeah, but people are holding on to their dead cells, and that's why they got so many dust bunnies of old stories and beliefs. Oh, I said it.
Let it go. Let it go.
Offload it.
Let it go.
Let your dust bunnies go.
If the last 2 years if it didn't teach us anything, it could be just the let it go, because you never really know, and it's okay. We never know anyway. So just let it go and just live in the present moment and just be. And that's so much easier said than done, though.
I was going to ask you, because it's real simple to be like, just let that go, guys. Just let it go. But what does it actually take to let things go?
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
Can we talk about that?
We are doing it.
Yes, we are being in this conversation. Okay, let's talk about it. So I think first, it's kind of what I mentioned before. You tell me, like, Lauren, what are your thoughts on letting go?
Well, so I look at, what prevents you from letting it go? Where does the old story bring you value? So one process, and I don't know if we talked about this when I saw you in Florida, one process that I'm certified in is resentment release. And so resentments actually sit in our body. They're old stories that we tell, and we relive the emotional experience and have a physical reaction to it, and it blocks us from our bigger purpose. So you have to be able to objectively look at, how does holding on to this old story or this harm, this resentment, how does it actually help me? Does it bring protection? Does it help me safeguard? Does it allow me to assess risk? Does it have me thinking slower? And so if we can pull the value from it, we can take that with us and reframe and reconstitute what that old story was, and let the rest of it go, so that it actually becomes a building block rather than an energy or a success block.
I'm just going to let that soak in for a second. Because it's so true. And it's a beautiful place to be as well, right? Because we are choosing, we get to be in the driver's seat of that. We don't have to wait for anyone to do that. We don't have to go to Walmart or some grocery store. Sorry if you don't go to Walmart, people, or whatever store you go to, Target, whatever. And so we don't have to go buy anything to do that.
No. And no one can give it to us either. Like, I think that's where people get tripped up too, is that they expect someone else is going to give them closure. They're going to give them permission. There's going to be some sort of resolution, but it's not until you're ready to release the pain, release the pressure, release the expectation, the perfection, all of that, that you can truly move on and let it go and offload it.
I will add too, that's why it's so important to have support around you too, in the midst of even thinking about doing something like that. Because a fish, what they say all the time, the fish can't see his own water.
Yeah.
And it's easier to backslide if we use that word for the sake of conversation. When you're doing all of this by yourself, there's a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
A lot of emotion. There's a lot of everything that you're releasing with that. Even sometimes I've seen Lauren with things like that, you can get, how can I say it? Like with physical health can seem to get worse in that time.
Yeah.
Before it gets better too, when you're releasing things like that. So you need a container or circle.
Yes, for sure. And a very intentionally curated circle.
Oh,
because like if people are in that venting, that drama stirring, they will actually reactivate the trauma. So I would say working with a professional who knows how to handle trauma, who knows how to handle grief. This is not something that I would go to, your best friend with, because they're going to want to love you. They're going to want to take the pain away, but it's a short-term pain that they're curing, but long-term, you're going to keep reliving this.
Yes. Yes. And I will say, someone who can speak truth to you and let me flip that. And the person can allow them to pull the truth out of them. Because again, we go back to those stories. And so we can tell ourselves like, oh, we're actually doing something about this. And we're not.
Yeah.
This action of I'm going to or I'm going to a therapist, so I'm doing something about it.
Yeah.
But there's so much more than or I'm going to even a doctor, a specialist or something for health about this. I'm doing something about it. But if you don't implement and you don't process and you don't work through the things that come through those sessions, assuming you got somebody like Lauren says that actually knows what the heck they're doing, because that's a whole nother story. Even with a professional curated team, then you need to really choose or decide if you're going to use that resource, use that time wisely to really take steps forward or hop on the merry-go-round again.
Yes. And the self-help merry-go-round is a really tricky one too. Like, I can't tell you how many people read a book and they're like, I am woke. I got this. And 2 weeks later, they're doing the same shit as they did before that got them into the mess they were in. So it's, what it is? It's responsibility transference. Whether it's a doctor you're going to see, a therapist, or a book, if you are not taking responsibility and accountability for your life and your choices, it is not up to somebody else to fix it for you.
Yes. I'll tell you this story on the physical side of it. Because everything we're talking about right now, we're really highlighting the nervous system as part of this. It's like it's core to what we're talking about. And many times it's not just our stuff, it's generational things as well. It's like built in that. So sometimes some things may feel unfamiliar that you're feeling. And a lot of times it's not even our own stuff, but we take ownership of that stuff and we don't take ownership of our own stuff as well, in addition to that self-help circle. And so that's one thing I really find interesting. So that's why when people are going through certain things, we mentioned this before, Lauren, too, about how words are really important. So I am depressed. No, you're not. No, you have to rephrase that. Or I am a diabetic. I do not. It's like, no, that's why I love Latin-based languages and we'll use Spanish as an example, right?
See?
So it's like the estoy and soy. Yes. I love, because it's like,
oh my God, I had a whole discussion about this like 2 years ago of the difference between estar and ser.
Ooh.
So to be in both cases, one is temporary and one is permanent.
Girl, yes. It's so real. And it's like, you are in a temporary state of fill in the blank. And it's not even yours. It's just the choices that you made up until that point. But because you made choices up until that point, do not judge yourself. Do not be hard on yourself. Use that energy to make different choices. And now you have a professional team that can help you make those different choices. And don't lose sight, even in the wings of your professional team, of your own intuitive power on top of that. Right?
Yeah.
So it's just like, I'm just sitting here like, oh my God, this is so beautiful.
This is what it is.
Like to be in as human.
Yeah, this is the intentional design. So like this past year, I've been all about like building my team and like getting very clear on what I'm intentionally designing for myself and constantly like on a daily basis, twice a day, assessing what worked and what didn't work and what I want more of, what I want less of, what I want to attract in. And I'll be damned, like everything is clicking. It doesn't mean that I haven't felt like really intense discomfort or felt really intense pain. That's what the healing process is. But I've been able to uncover all of this old story that has just been sitting under the surface that I've been tucking away, hoping nobody noticed. But in the opening, in this expansion, you're also like allowing all of this other stuff to breathe, to see at the surface, to then release.
Say it again.
Release, open, love.
Yes, because it's like people try to skip over the discomfort,
Yes.
and as if it's a bad thing. It's a part of the process. If we kind of take a step back from personalizing so many things, like we said, we love to personalize the things that don't belong to us and like not take personal responsibility of the things that do belong to us. And it's like, is the discomfort really like out to get you? Is it really like saying, I'm going to come get Stacy, I'm going to come get Lauren? No, it's just a part of the process. It's just.
And let's flip that even more. So if the discomfort was actually an ally, what would it be trying to highlight for you?
Yes. It's like, and in many ways, it's telling you things that we just talked about this in another way. In many ways, it's highlighting the things that your team may not be able to necessarily do for you because they haven't lived your life. And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of it.
And they're not meant to, because that is the part that you have to own.
Okay, back to personal responsibility, right? Yes. So we all get to play a role in this change. And we all have a role to play. And to me, it's all a starting role. Like you're the starting role. And it's like, awesome. You never get, I was never in drama club, but I see, I've seen those movies where, they're all trying to act for the starting role. And, for the most part, only one person can be chosen for the role. It's like, you're always chosen for that role. It's like, you always get that role. So it's like exciting. And so now you just got to start, just looking and seeing how you want to play that out.
Yeah. Well, and be your own hero, but also know that like in the hero's journey, you need to have allies and you're going to have antagonists in the story because that's what provokes the change.
Can we talk more about the I'm taking over.
Yeah. Can we talk about this? Yes. And this is why, like, when people are like, I don't want these people in my life, I'm like, but they're there. So why are they there? What are they there to teach you?
And this can have, and we have different times during the year where this can be extra highlighted, right? Yep. Like over the holidays can be one time of the year where that can be highlighted. You're like, wait, why? But like you said, everything and every person can serve a purpose if we allow them space to. And it's just really interesting because you can take the lesson and this is going to sound harsh, but whatever. You can take the lesson and leave the person.
Oh, for sure. And I do all the time because I'm like, oh, you are not for me, but that story, I get it. Thank you.
And the reason why I say that is because sometimes, like, when people come and like, oh, I'm so stressed out, like, what supplements do I take for this? And then the more I get into like, tell me what's really going on. And I always ask, like, what happened 2 years ago and 1 year ago, like from whatever they're experiencing. And without a doubt, it always involves some kind of humans. And then it's just like, we need to talk about boundaries and we need to talk about all this other stuff. Like there is no supplement for boundaries. There is no supplement for your childhood trauma. There is no supplement for a lot of those things. So yes, we can give you things to support your physiologic process through that healing. Yet there is some pull up your big whatever panties on stuff that you have to do too that won't fit in the bottle.
If you're wearing some panties.
Right. Okay, I love it. Like, you need air some stuff. I'm like, I love it. But it's true. It's just like, because a lot of times, and that's the way that they're giving away personal responsibility.
Yes.
Some people have been groomed to give away that. So they don't know what that even looks like. From a child up, they've been groomed to not understand what self is and what is identity is for themselves. Like it's a part of their parent, for example.
Yeah,
So
for
that's
sure.
another.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, like I think it was like from like 6 months to age 7 is like when we establish our belief about ourselves in the world. And so any child, whether like you had the most perfect relationships with your parents and your siblings, like there's always trauma. And if you have actually, the person that I got certified from with the resentment release, she actually said she has this theory that children who experience trauma in that window have access to more intuition.
I can see that.
Because you're in that self-protection. So like you are just more hyper aware of like energy, of people, of risk, of other things. And so if you don't learn how to convert it into working for you, you become very guarded and defensive for most of your life.
I can see that. I can see that. And it's just really interesting. Like there's so many components of this. And so that's what it reminded me of how identity is so important. And not identity in the way we necessarily talk about it in America.
Yeah, we're not check boxes.
Right, exactly. But just having some sense, however that looks, of self. And it's never going to be complete because we're growing and learning and becoming adults with some sense of self and some sense of that. It really helps for mattering. I always joke with my friends who know where their family comes from, even when we think about cultural stuff, right? Because I mean, my family was brought over a boat, one-way ticket, in a way, and we don't have any idea of where we come from or our background. And I always felt like a part of that was, I always wish I knew that part of myself. Like we can guesstimate because you've seen me, so you know, like, okay, she has a little bit of pigment there, so we have an idea of where she comes from. But it would be nice to really to pinpoint that, but I can't. So I always feel like that's a void that as I get older, I have a little sadness around. It's really funny, Lauren. Like growing up, it was like, oh, okay, whatever. I'm American. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad to be here now. I'm sorry for the way it happened, but it's like, dude, I'm glad to be here. We have our own mess, but I travel all over the world and I enjoy my time in each place that I go, but this is always home. But at the same time, I wish I had more of that connection and understanding. So I always find it really interesting when people do, and they don't seem to really appreciate it.
Yeah. I understand that. Not from the specific example that you're sharing, but like from a family perspective. So, this is just recent, and bringing it up is, I was around a very like loving, like tight knit family over the holidays. And it really was apparent to me how much I did not grow up with that. And there was grief. There was lots of grief attached to that, of this longing for a family, this longing for connection and unconditional love, and in the way that it was expressed, and that identity that comes with it, and the safety that comes with it, the knowing.
I love that. Do you hear what we're saying right now, though? It's going back to everyone has some form.
Everyone has it.
Everyone has it. No one's immune. There's no special snowflakes. Some may be more intense than others in terms of what the void is and what the trauma is and what fill in the blank is. But every human has it. Because what you mentioned is so powerful. And it really makes a big difference in how we show up, even in our friendships moving forward, how we show up in romantic relationships. Because then if we don't feel like, not saying this is you, Lauren, because I know you're at another level than the average human, I feel. We've talked about that. But it's just like they start looking for that unconditional love in other places where it's not meant to be given to you. Ooh. Like, I don't care what anyone says, a romantic relationship is not a place for unconditional love. Like,
wait, no. Say that again.
a romantic relationship, even friendships, but that's not a place for unconditional love. It's conditional. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. It's conditional. And I don't know why. Well, as we just talked about why, where people expect that unconditional love it's just really distorted. And it puts a lot of unnecessary pressure on people involved and a lot of unnecessary strain. Yet, what you just talked about, Lauren, about the antagonist and how it highlights, if we choose to look at, okay, what is this highlighting for me? And what am I gonna do about what is highlighting for me? Like you just talked about that, right? Yeah. Then it can shift some things. But yeah.
Yeah. So I want to ask you this. So where does the unconditional love need to come from?
The best it can, I feel like, because we're dealing with a whole bunch of humans, and we just talked about, even if we label them as parents or grandparents or whoever will raise you, like they're still humans and they still have all of their stuff too. But the best they can from that set of people, like parents or whoever raised the person, the human. But as best they can, because a lot of times our parents, our grandparents, whoever raised us, our adopted parents, they are still working through their stuff. They are still projecting their stuff. Yep. A lot of times, but as kids, we don't know it's a projection. So that's why we personalize it, because we don't always know. Like, just because mommy is acting like that doesn't define how my level of self-esteem or my level of self-worth. But if that's the person we're connected to and we're seeing every day, that's what we're going to define. Like, well, when I'm trying to think of an example, let's think of like a narcissistic parent, because that's like the best, most extreme example, even though there's a spectrum within NPD, right? But like if I don't do this for mommy, she's not going to give me a hug. She's going to ignore me or not listen to me. But if I do what she says, then she's going to love me. So then this person's going to grow up and may be a people pleaser. Right. And so they're thinking, without even people requesting it, that if I go overboard and do all this stuff for them, they will love me. And it's like, is it? Yeah. Is that really true? Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to go back to the question then, because you told me where it should come from, but we know that that's not possible. No. So what if we are our epicenters of unconditional love?
That's the only place we can't, because we can't. I'm trying to think of another word, because depend is not sitting well with me.
Well, we can't control others.
No, we can't at all.
At all.
At all. We can barely control ourselves sometimes. But
seriously.
So, yeah. But what could that look like? Trusting, because it's one thing to know that we are that. It's another thing to trust
and believe
and feel safe and in that. Yes, and believe in that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's speaking the truth and then acting on the truth and holding your word with yourself. And I think that's where it breaks down the most. So imagine disappointing someone else by promising and not delivering. But then flip that on. What are you promising yourself time and time again and not delivering on? So how do we start first? By keeping our word with ourselves.
And what came to mind, which is why I had a moment of silence with that too, is because sometimes we don't go back on our word to other people. We would go over and beyond for other people and still fall back on our word for ourselves. And it's like, what? Not in a facetious way, but what makes them more important than you?
That's a great question. And I think it's one to sit with. And then you come back to self-esteem. I think it's all based on what is the worth that you see within yourself and where do you show up in the rankings of the people around you.
This is good.
If you are not at the top, who are you surrounding yourself with? Yeah. Because my friends got real pissed at me when they found out that I was not at the top of my list.
And that's key. Are you hearing that? Because most people's friends would get pissed at them if they're not at the top of their list.
That's
Hello.
real friendship. They're like, what do you mean you put someone else before you for years?
And let's not even talk about friends. Family can be pissed if they're not at the top of your list.
Yep. Oh, I don't know if you saw this. So there was an Instagram post, I think from a psychiatrist or psychologist, that said, it was like phrasing things of like, if someone ever says, after all I've done for you, this is not love. This is manipulation.
Hello.
And
there's so much more manipulation, gaslighting, etc. happening that's being labeled as love.
So you got to define what love is. First for yourself, and then raise your bar for the people who label it that way outside of you.
Which means you may have to clean a little house.
You're definitely going to have to clean house.
And when you do that, we just brings us back full circle, right? There's going to be some grief. There may be. Sometimes you might be like, good riddance. I am glad to know I'm not obligated, because we also think love is obligation.
Oh, yeah.
And like, geez, it's like, no, because it's not that. So if they can release that, that's a huge weight.
Yeah. But you have to have clarity in the definition to know what your standards are, to know what your values are, to know where your bar is, where your boundaries are, and then you can rise to the occasion.
You see what I mean? There's no supplement for that.
None, no bypassing it. There are no hacks. There is no magical pill.
Like, your high blood pressure came from something. Sometimes
genetics,
it's something in the body, but thank you. That's what I tell people. A lot of the times, your genetics play a very small role in it. It's like, what are you tolerating?
Yeah. Yes.
What are you feeling obligated to? I get in those questions with it because I'm like, let's talk about the me. Sometimes I had a medical assistant a long time ago used to be like, Dr. Stacy, like, your people come out either pissed or crying. And I don't mean to do it that way. Not a good look
for the waiting room.
Right? And I don't mean to do it that way, but it's like, I feel like it's such a blessing for me when someone chooses to see me. And so it's my duty to create a space for whatever needs to come out, because sometimes they come out doing nothing because it's not the time for it.
Yep.
But it's like, people are being told fluffy flower stuff all the time. People are being told like all this generic crap all the time. I just don't feel it's a service. It's
not. I mean, it's a service they're getting money for because it's a short-term fix, but it is not a solution. So that's the question. Do you want to feel better now, or do you actually want to resolve it?
And that's it. And it's still what you asked the question. You didn't make a statement. So that's still their choice.
It's always a choice.
And
that's power.
And it's not even about getting their power back, because I always find that statement interesting. Like, stress management is interesting to me. I'm like, why would you want to manage stress?
No, I want to resolve it.
I'm like,
I want to reject it. Thank you.
I hate using that phrase because I'm like, what doesn't it make sense? But it's the same difference. It's like, you don't take your power back. You never lost it. You're just not using it.
Yes. You've just covered it with other crap.
Yes, you're removing mask and muck and all of that stuff, so that you can see it again.
Yes,
because I always find it really interesting. That's why I feel like people that feel like they're not enough, or this imposter syndrome conversation, is always interesting to me, because I'm just like, well, if you were not that important, you would not be going through all of the things that you're going through to have your purpose, your vision, whatever, fill in the blank, destiny, what you want to call it, delayed. Like, nobody would think twice about you. And when I say nobody, I mean humans, spirits, whatever, everything. Because it's a whole nother ball game. We don't need to we don't have to dive in on this show necessarily. And it's like, if you were not that important, if you were not more than enough right now, as you were born into this world, why would you be going through all that? I don't care about things that aren't important. We don't give energy and the focus and all that to something that's not important. So you must be some version of important.
Otherwise, why am I wasting my time with this conversation?
Yeah, it's just somebody does not, or something does not want you to realize that. It could just be you. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and so whenever I can't tell you how many clients I've had come to me saying that they're dealing with imposter syndrome. And I was like, great. So that's not what this is. This is not a disease or disorder. This is a lack of confidence in evidence collection. So are we ready to do that? Cool. Let's go.
Yes, girl, hop off the merry-go-round.
Bye.
Lauren, see, this is where we click because I'm just like, what is all these labels? Like, what is this? Like, okay,
I
great.
hate it. I hate the self-diagnosis, and I'm sure you hate it too.
Oh my God, yes, I do.
It's like, let's look at your symptoms. Cool. So that's not the root issue.
Yes, yes.
Let's talk about what's really causing this. Great. Jesus.
I'm gonna pull you out the rabbit hole. Yeah.
Yes. And we could go on and on. And I'm sure if people wanted to keep listening, we would. And we definitely need to do another show on all the ways that people self-diagnose themselves and, then bring you into all their energetic bullshit. But,
Yes.
We love it. We had our own experience with it and we're like, no.
And that's what I'm going to talk about.
We bonded over someone else's foolishness. It was great.
Yes. Because it just, when you see it, you're just like, damn. Like no.
No.
All my one word responses.
No, just no.
No.
Yeah.
And don't feed it, like then you get your circle round, like you said, your intentional circle, because they're not going to feed that shit. They're not going to feed it.
No, and they'll probably leave you at your table because they're like, you are in some shit. Why don't you get that cleared up?
Because with the people on my face, I'm like, you got 3 minutes. I mean, I'll give you 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, let's set the timer and I'm going to come back when I hear it go off. And then we're going to get to the real stuff.
Yeah. You know who's really good at the tough love?
Who?
Ebony.
Oh, yes. I was going to say that.
I was like, you're going to make me cry now. You're just going to let me sit in it.
And it's like succinct tough love.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's like one word.
Yes. And you're like, okay.
What I'm giving you. The end. I love it. Well, Dr. Stacy, we have been yapping up a storm and this has been amazing. I'm trying to think of what is our theme, and we've covered 17 in this conversation.
I love it. It's been fun.
It has been fun. Thank you for your time and sharing your wisdom. And if the listeners want to learn more about you and get some tough love and tears or anger out of them, where should they go?
They should go to LinkedIn. That'll be the easiest place to find me.
Right.
And just let me know how you know me, because I may not accept your request. I'm working on it, Lauren. I'm working on it.
Oh my gosh, we got to talk. That's what our next show is going to be about: how to expand your network, how to let down your walls. Yeah. So if you want to stalk Dr. Stacy, I'll put the link in the show notes and say, I heard you on Lauren's podcast, so that she'll connect with you, because otherwise, apparently the wall is very high.
I'm like, who are you? How do we know?
I feel really honored that you let me in.
This is childhood stuff.
Oh, yeah. On our next conversation, we'll be breaking down childhood trauma.
Yes.
Actually, you know what? I probably should do a live resentment release and see how that goes.
Ooh,
That would be really
cool. Lauren.
That'd be super cool. I would need permission big time, because it is an emotional process for sure.
Well, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing and being of service in that way. It's so needed. It's always been needed, but even more so now.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I feel like I'm doing the work I was supposed to do. So I'm like, yep, alignment, we're here. And we're not going anywhere. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you again for your time, and for all the Spitfires out there. You keep being awesome.